All right, so, we love to do these deep dives, and you sent over something pretty interesting.
Yeah.
An article from TATANKA
Yeah.
about this new album from Anna Volkova.
Yes.
I'm excited to get into this, and this album is called 𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗓, Anna Volkova's Widow Widow,
Right.
which translates to Nocturnal Passage.
Exactly.
So, we'll get into this a bit more, I think, but
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about Anna Volkova herself?
Yeah. So she's a really interesting figure from what I gather in the article.
Right.
She started out as a cellist in St. Petersburg
Okay.
and then transitioned to becoming this solo artist. And the article really focuses on her latest album, Nocturnal Passage, which has this incredible subtitle, Weaving Noir Nostalgia with the Ghosts of the Cold Wave Era.
Yeah, I mean, just reading that title and subtitle,
Yeah.
you're already transported somewhere.
Absolutely. It's very evocative.
Very evocative, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, too, is the themes that come up in this album, according to the article, are all about displacement,
Right.
memory, and transformation.
Exactly. And her own journey
Yeah.
from St. Petersburg to Tierra del Fuego really mirrors that.
So both geographically and kind of metaphorically and thematically in the music.
Absolutely. It's like a physical and emotional journey happening at the same time.
And the way this album is structured, too, is really interesting. It's in 3 acts.
Right.
And they sort of trace this descent through darkness and then this grappling with loss and then ultimately renewal.
Yeah, it's a classic narrative arc, but done in a really unique way through music.
Yeah, let's jump into that first act.
Yeah.
The dissolution, fading from the old world.
Yeah.
And, the setting here, the article describes it as fog-drenched St. Petersburg. So already,
Very atmospheric.
very noir, very atmospheric.
Setting the mood.
And the first track. Yes, I found you.
Yeah. Strange Lights in the Fog.
Yeah.
In English.
Which translates to Strange Lights in the Fog.
Yeah.
So just from the title alone,
Mm-hmm.
this sense of mystery, this sort of, like a detective novel almost.
Right. Exactly. It's drawing you in.
Yeah. How does the music itself create that feeling?
Well, the article talks about these haunting synths and this kind of noir-infused lyricism. And I think what's really interesting is how the soundscape itself becomes part of the storytelling.
Oh, interesting.
Those strange lights, they're not just a visual, they're also represented in the music.
Oh.
Maybe through these sort of dissonant, synths with a slow attack.
Right.
Creating this feeling of unease, of something not quite right.
Interesting.
And then her vocals are described as ghostly and laid over this minimalist arrangement.
Okay.
So you really get this sense of spectral loneliness, right? This feeling of being isolated in a place that was once familiar, but now feels alienating. And that's classic noir, right?
Yeah.
That urban alienation.
Okay, so we're already getting this sense of unease.
Yeah.
This sense of mystery.
Definitely.
And then the second track on this first act is 𝗧𝗔𝗓𝗑, which means the last train from St. Petersburg.
Right, the last train.
The last train, yeah. So even the title itself is just laden with meaning.
Heavy.
And the article talks about the rhythmic hum of departure.
Yeah.
So, connecting this back to the theme of displacement. What's the significance of this act of boarding the train?
I think it's like a point of no return, right?
Oh, interesting.
You're severing ties with the past, making this irreversible choice to leave the old world behind.
So it's not just a train ride. It's symbolic of this whole transition.
Exactly. It's a metaphor for that larger journey.
And the article points out this really interesting contrast between the mechanical rhythm of the train and the organic, desperation in her voice.
Right. That's brilliant.
So it's like this tension between
absolutely,
like the force of moving forward and the internal resistance.
Like you're being pulled along even if you don't want to go.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so now we move on to Act 2.
Okay.
The passage, drifting in the unknown.
The in-between space.
The between space, right? And the setting here really shifts.
Yeah.
It becomes this liminal space that the article describes as surreal and dreamlike.
Right, like you're not quite
not anchored anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the first track on this act is 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧.
Which means a room full of ghosts.
Yeah. A room full of ghosts. So
kooky.
Already a little spooky, right?
Yeah.
What stands out to you about how this track creates that feeling?
Well, the article talks about these spectral vocal harmonies layered over these eerie pulsing synths.
Okay.
And I think what's really effective here is the way those harmonies are used.
Yeah.
Maybe they're slightly detuned.
Okay.
Creating this feeling of unease, right? Like overlapping memories that don't quite align.
Interesting.
And the synths, they could be like a slow rhythmic pulse, creating that sense of being trapped in a cycle.
Okay.
Haunted by these echoes of the past.
So it's not just ghosts, literally.
Yeah.
It's the ghosts of her past.
The ghosts of memory.
Yeah, and the music itself is shifting.
Yeah.
Between dissonant and hypnotic.
Right, which mirrors that feeling of being adrift.
Unmoored.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then we get to
Moonlit Crossing. Okay.
Yeah.
And here the article mentions that the compositions get increasingly abstract and textural.
Yeah, more experimental.
Yeah. So what's the symbolic weight of this moonlit crossing?
I think it's a moment of surrender.
Okay.
You're yielding to this nocturnal tide.
Right.
Maybe her voice starts to merge with industrial echoes. Shimmering synths.
Okay.
It's like she's letting go of her former identity.
So it's not just a crossing.
No, it's a transformation.
It's symbolic.
A shedding of the old self.
The old self, yeah. And those industrial echoes I'm imagining.
Are maybe like the remnants of that old world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the shimmering synths could hint at the possibility of something new.
Something new, yeah. So there's this sense of anticipation of moving towards something, but we don't quite know what it is yet.
Right. It's still shrouded in mystery.
Okay. And then finally, we reach Act 3.
The arrival.
The arrival, rebirth in the South.
Yeah.
And we're transported to Tierra del Fuego.
A very different landscape.
Very different, right. The article describes it as rugged shores.
Dramatic.
Dramatic, yeah. Okay, and the first track we encounter here is
Southern Wind.
Southern Wind, and the music here is described as having these icy minimalist arrangements. Sparse, yeah, which I imagine reflects that vast, untamed landscape.
Absolutely. It's mirroring the environment.
And what about her vocals?
Well, the article points out that her voice has shifted.
Oh, interesting.
From that spectral lament we heard earlier to this tone of quiet acceptance.
So she's found some peace.
It seems, so a kind of resilience.
Yeah.
Having gone through this ordeal and come out the other side.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then the final track of the album.
Closing statement.
Which translates to a new shadow.
A new shadow. So it's an end, but also a beginning.
Very interesting. Yeah. The article describes this as having this dual nature.
Yeah.
This sense of closure, but also a new chapter starting. How does the music itself reflect that idea of reinvention?
Well, what's interesting here is the way the music weaves together elements of the past and the present.
Okay.
So the article mentions these distant echoes of earlier musical motifs.
Right.
So you're reminded of the journey she's been on. But now there's this subtle warmth emerging in the sound.
So it's not erasing the past, it's incorporating it.
Exactly. It's building upon what came before.
Yeah.
But with this sense of hope for what lies ahead.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And looking at the album as a whole, the article describes it as having this timeless noir soundscape.
Right.
And mentions some really specific influences like early 80s German New Wave, Cold Wave, Gothic minimal synth.
Which all have this kind of dark atmospheric quality.
Yeah. What are the key sonic elements that really create that specific feeling?
Well, the article talks about the heavy use of reverb.
Right.
Creating this sense of space and maybe even a feeling of being lost in memory.
Okay.
And then you've got these pulsing bass lines that provide this underlying tension and momentum.
Okay.
Often with a slightly melancholic feel.
I can hear that, yeah.
And then those spectral synth textures, those layered ethereal sounds that create this hazy atmospheric quality.
Yeah.
It's a sonic palette that feels both rooted in that specific historical period with all those post-punk anxieties, but also somehow timeless.
Yeah, it's interesting how certain sounds can just evoke certain feelings.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Regardless of when they were made. And the article describes Volkova's vocal style as being both distant and intimate.
Which is an interesting combination.
It is, yeah. How does that contribute to the overall listening experience?
Well, I think the distance in her voice creates this otherworldly feeling.
Okay.
Like she's narrating this journey from a removed perspective.
Right.
Almost like a ghost observing events.
Interesting.
but then the intimacy pulls you in close.
Okay.
Making you feel like she's confiding in you.
Right.
Sharing these very personal, vulnerable emotions.
So it's like you're both an observer
Yeah.
and a participant.
Exactly, and that duality, I think, is what makes it so captivating.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And then the article introduces this other story about a Russian singer-songwriter named 𝗓𝗓,
Right.
who ends up in Chicago.
Right.
And this feels like such a powerful parallel to Volkova's story.
Absolutely.
What were 𝗓𝗓's experiences like?
Well, she arrives in America, with these dreams and aspirations, but what she encounters is disillusionment.
Okay.
This feeling of being an outsider.
Right.
The article talks about broken promises from a producer, closed doors.
So it's not the welcoming place she imagined it to be?
No, it's a harsh reality.
Yeah.
And she ends up working in these, back alley clubs, facing prejudice.
Right.
And her music, which was her passion, becomes secondary to just surviving.
So it's like her art is stifled.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation.
Yeah, and then the article mentions this really interesting encounter. She meets a musician from TATANKA.
Right.
And they invite her to 𝗧𝗓 del Fuego.
To 𝗧𝗓 del Fuego, yeah.
What do you think prompted her to actually take that leap of faith?
Well, it sounds like she had reached a breaking point.
Yeah.
America had become this place of isolation and dashed hopes.
Right.
And this invitation was like a glimmer of hope.
A chance
to reclaim her music.
Yeah.
To find a sense of belonging.
And community.
Exactly something she hadn't found in Chicago.
Yeah, and what does she find in 𝗧𝗓 del Fuego?
Well, according to the article, she found acceptance.
Okay.
A community of musicians who valued her talent.
Right.
Without demanding she conform.
So she could be herself.
Yeah, she could be herself.
Yeah.
And create freely.
And the article mentions this song of hers.
Yeah.
This Is Not America.
Right.
Which is described as a lament, a rebellion, and a hymn all at once.
Yeah, it's a powerful statement.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, it's a lament for the broken promises, the disillusionment she experienced, the shattering of that American dream.
Right.
But it's also a rebellion against the prejudice, the barriers she faced.
Yeah.
And ultimately it becomes this hymn.
The hymn
for those who, like her, found strength and belonging in unexpected places beyond those traditional borders.
That's really powerful.
It is, yeah.
And the article makes this point that true freedom isn't about location.
Right.
It's about being yourself.
Exactly, finding that space where you're truly allowed to be you.
Which connects back to both Volkova's and 𝗓𝗓's stories.
It's the thread that ties them together.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that 𝗓𝗓's experience is almost like a real-world manifestation of the themes in Volkova's album.
Absolutely. It's like life imitating art.
And the fact that she's now part of TATANKA's Orchestra Americana really brings that full circle.
It shows the power of art to not just reflect reality, but to shape it.
Yeah, so we've been on this deep dive.
Yeah, fascinating.
Into Anna Volkova's Nocturnal Passage, and it's clear that this album is more than just music.
It's a journey.
It's a narrative journey.
Absolutely.
Exploring these themes of leaving and loss.
Yeah.
And ultimately finding something new.
Renewal.
Yeah. And I think, what's really striking is how this connects back to our love of these deep dives and these aha moments.
Absolutely.
The connection between this conceptual album and 𝗓𝗓's real-life experience is so unexpected.
But so powerful.
So powerful. Yeah. And it really shows how art can illuminate the human experience.
Yeah, it makes you think about all those other nocturnal passages happening around us that we might not even be aware of.
That we might not be aware of. Yeah. It's really thought-provoking. So thank you for sharing this with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a great deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.